Imagine for a second that you're standing at the bottom of this massive glowing staircase,
Okay, I'm picturing it.
and you're told that this staircase is the absolute only way to reach a state of, like, ultimate spiritual enlightenment.
Right, which usually implies a lot of hard work.
Exactly. But here's the catch. Instead of the steps being made of asceticism or, fasting or the intense denial of earthly pleasures.
Which is basically the blueprint we are usually handed.
Right. But instead, these steps are constructed entirely out of the exact things society tells you to suppress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We're talking about romantic love, physical pleasure, and just deeply uninhibited emotional connection. You're basically told that if you don't fully experience and enjoy these things, you aren't just missing out on life. You are literally barred from entering heaven.
That completely flips the traditional script of spiritual asceticism, doesn't
It
it?
really does.
You're suddenly looking at this framework where denying yourself pleasure isn't a virtue. It's not some test of willpower. It's actually categorized as a fundamental failure to appreciate a divine gift.
And for you, the listener, if you're someone who loves looking at the world through completely different lenses, well, today we are unpacking a really radical 2006 translated text. It's by an author known as Deiform Celestial.
And it's titled Lifechanyuan's Viewpoint on Emotional Love and Romantic Love.
Yes, and it basically argues that redefining our approach to human ecstasy might literally be the password to higher dimensions.
It's a huge claim.
It is. So to give a tiny bit of context before we jump into this deep dive, Lifechanyuan is this highly unique philosophical and spiritual framework. It attempts to merge human consciousness, ecology, and a very literal cosmology.
Yeah, and the text we are looking at today isolates one really specific thread of that philosophy, which is basically why human beings are so weird about love and sex.
Right, and why fixing that is a literal cosmic requirement.
And I think we need to understand the underlying mechanics of this worldview right off the bat. Our goal here isn't to endorse these beliefs, obviously, but to unpack their internal logic.
Exactly. We're just reporting on what the text says.
Right. And this philosophy treats physical and emotional connection not as a distraction from the divine, which is, a very common religious trope, but as a mandatory curriculum.
So let's start at the very foundation of that curriculum.
Yeah.
To understand how a person supposedly ascends in this framework, we really have to grasp the baseline premise.
Which is all about earthly pleasure.
Yeah, earthly pleasure is positioned as a deliberate divine design. The author points out that everything from the sunshine, the air, the water, and the mountains, all the way down to human organs, the senses, and romantic love. All of it.
It all represents the blessings of what they call the greatest creator.
Right. And I love how the philosophy draws a direct line between experiencing joy and expressing cosmic gratitude.
It's a really interesting mechanism. The logic basically dictates that to enjoy these earthly blessings fully is the primary way a human being loves the greatest creator.
Like participation is mandatory.
Exactly. Only those who understand this truth and who genuinely indulge in this joy without shame are actually walking on the correct path. It suggests that enjoying your life is a theological requirement.
The author actually challenges the reader with these great rhetorical questions, too. They ask, like, what are the most wonderful things in your life?
Right. They ask you to think about how you felt about your first love.
Holding hands for the first time. Experiencing physical intimacy for the first time. The framework argues these are the most precious, high-frequency experiences a human can possibly have.
But that instantly sets up a massive contradiction, doesn't
A
it?
huge one. If this is all a pure divine gift, why has human society spent millennia making love, and especially physical love, so ambiguous and secretive?
And sanctimonious.
Yes,
Yeah.
so sanctimonious.
The author provides a very cynical but structurally fascinating diagnostic of human society here.
Okay, let's unpack this, because they outline 8 specific reasons why we have historically built massive walls around emotional and romantic love.
And when you look closely at these 8 reasons, they aren't really about morality at all.
No, not at all. They are almost entirely about power dynamics, economic control, and psychological projection.
Let's pull on that thread of economic control first, because several of the reasons the author lists are just about hoarding.
Hoarding love.
Yeah. The text argues that powerful people who have actually enjoyed deep romantic love treat it like a discovered gold mine.
Oh, wow. So they want to keep it for themselves.
Exactly. They are terrified of losing their exclusive rights to it, so they spread lies to cover up the truth and keep the masses restricted.
It also points out that people set up these artificial moral obstacles simply out of the fear of losing private property or, losing their spouses.
The structural argument there is that free, uninhibited love threatens societal stability.
Right, because if people are deeply fulfilled and not bound by rigid structures of ownership, and that includes owning other people, it becomes much harder for authorities to control them.
So authorities suppress human nature to maintain a very rigid, predictable social order. It's this idea that keeping people slightly miserable and restricted makes them easier to govern.
Which makes total sense from a grim utilitarian standpoint.
Yeah.
But then the text pivots to the psychological barriers, which are honestly even more interesting to me.
Oh, the sour grapes argument.
Yes,
Yeah.
it brings up the classic sour grapes mentality. People who can't find love actively try to prevent others from having it.
Or people who got hurt in love. The author has this great line where they say, those people essentially give up eating for fear of choking.
Right, and then they project that trauma onto everyone else, demanding that society avoid love too.
It really is a sharp critique of how trauma and dysfunction shape our moral baseline. The text suggests that physically and mentally unhealthy people who have never actually experienced joyous relationships unconsciously discredit romantic love.
And then over generations, that dysfunction gets codified into societal morality.
We end up with a situation where a few instances of unhealthy, toxic relationships have given love such terrible PR that the masses would rather starve on a restrictive diet than risk eating a delicacy.
And to top it all off, you have what the text calls feudal elders.
Oh, right, the elders.
Yeah, these people who artificially elevated romantic love to a scary, untouchable moral height just to protect their own masks of the saints.
They basically invented the optics of asceticism just to look superior to everyone else.
It's like society treats joy and love as a highly rationed, dangerous resource that needs to be locked in a vault and guarded by armed men. But this text argues joy is actually a renewable energy source designed to keep us spiritually alive.
That's a great analogy.
It's like society is basically hoarding the sun and telling everyone that living in the dark is a moral virtue.
And because society's rules are built on that artificial scarcity and that hoarding, the text argues that our entire moral baseline for human relationships is fundamentally broken.
We're basically operating on a corrupted operating system.
Exactly. And to fix it, the author introduces a completely new moral foundation, which requires a radical shift in how we view sin.
This was the biggest aha moment in the entire text for me. The author directly addresses the traditional ancient proverb that lewdness is the worst of all sins.
And they just completely reject it.
Completely. Instead, they declare a new baseline. They say, domination is the worst of all sins.
If we look at the psychological mechanism behind that argument, it completely re-engineers how we think about conflict.
How so?
Well, the text argues that lewdness, jealousy, violence between spouses, the concept of being unfaithful, all of these negative outcomes are downstream effects of domination.
Oh, I see.
The logic is that if you believe you own another person, or you have the right to dominate their emotional and physical life, you are creating the very conditions for conflict.
It totally redefines infidelity. The author says if there is no restraint, then no one will be unfaithful to their mate.
It's essentially arguing that the wall itself creates the concept of trespassing.
That is such a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
If you tear down the property line, you aren't trespassing anymore. You're just walking in an open field.
Remove the concept of ownership, and you remove the root cause of the friction.
Right. If there is no domination, there's no domestic abuse, no jealousy, and literally no concept of a cuckold.
And this leads to their strict standard for what makes a relationship moral. In this framework, morality has absolutely nothing to do with head count.
Right. The text lists all these various relationship styles: monogamy, celibacy, polygamy, polyandry.
It says the patterns of love are colorful and multifarious and are entirely a personal affair. 3, 8, or 20 people can all love each other, and it is considered beautiful.
But the absolute non-negotiable metric for morality is 100% mutual consent.
The text is incredibly explicit about this. Everyone has independent will. No one has the right to impose their will on someone else.
It specifically says that if there is the slightest reluctance from anyone involved, it is no longer love.
It instantly becomes harassment.
Exactly. It becomes a crime, and it should be punished. Anti-coercion is domination, and domination is the ultimate sin.
Right.
But wait, so if we completely remove the concept of owning our partners, the text claims all relationship conflicts and crimes of passion just vanish.
That's the claim.
Is human nature really that simple? Or is the text demanding we completely rewrite our biological instincts? because we have millions of years of mammalian evolution, deeply ingrained territorial instincts, and very real fears of abandonment. You can't just philosophize away biological jealousy by saying don't dominate people.
This raises an important question, and that skepticism is entirely warranted if we are looking at this purely as a sociological blueprint for Earth.
Right, because on Earth, that sounds impossible.
But the text actually anticipates that biological friction. It doesn't claim that dropping domination is natural for a human, nor does it view human biology as the final, perfected state of existence.
So what is it then?
This philosophy views earthly life and the mammalian brain merely as a temporary, highly flawed beta testing environment.
Ah, so the friction is the point.
Precisely. The reason the framework demands this radical, almost impossible overwriting of our biological instincts is because dropping domination isn't just about achieving world peace on Earth. It is a specific test.
A cosmic test.
The ultimate goal is to debug your consciousness so you can qualify for admission into higher cosmic realms. You have to prove you can handle love without ownership before you are allowed to graduate.
Which brings us to the cosmic ladder. This isn't just a self-help guide for polyamorous dating. It is a literal cosmology.
Right.
The author asks, what is the purpose of all self-improvement and self-refinement? And the answer provided is to escape the darkness of the earthly realm and extend life into heaven.
And heaven, in this text, is mapped out in what they call the 36-dimensional space.
Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, to clarify for anyone unfamiliar with that term, the 36-dimensional space isn't just a metaphor. In the Lifechanyuan framework, it is a highly detailed structural map of the universe, categorized by vibrational frequencies.
Okay, so how does that work?
Think of it like tuning a radio dial. Earth operates on a very dense, low frequency. As you refine your consciousness, you tune your dial to higher, clearer frequencies, allowing you to access these higher dimensions.
And the text focuses on three distinct higher realms that practitioners are actively trying to reach: the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and the Elysium Islands continent.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the physical mechanics of emotional and romantic love completely change at each successive tier.
Let's examine that progression, starting with the first level of heaven, which is the 1,000-year world.
Okay, so the text notes that on Earth, love is cautious, sneaky, and full of terrible risks because of all those societal walls we discussed earlier.
Right.
But once a consciousness reaches the 1,000-year world, love becomes entirely free and upright. There are zero risks.
But the massive catch is that to have that freedom, the structures of ownership are gone entirely. There are no marriages in this realm.
None at all.
There are no traditional families. You don't have a spouse. Everyone is a highly evolved, emotionally rich, celestial being, and everyone is essentially each other's sweetheart.
It's the earthly practice of dropping domination taken to its absolute literal conclusion. You have proven you don't need a property line, so you get to live in the open field.
That makes sense based on their logic.
But that is only level 1. If a consciousness continues to evolve and moves from the 1,000-year world to the 10,000-year world, the physical mechanics of existence change drastically. Physical touch is removed from the equation completely.
Wait, how does that even work? If physical pleasure is the divine gift, why do they lose it?
Well, they don't lose the pleasure. They just lose the need for the dense physical mechanism.
Oh, I see.
The text explains that in the 10,000-year world, beings have such incredibly high vibrational frequencies that the nervous system, or, its energetic equivalent, is hyper-tuned.
So what do they feel?
They experience extreme mind-bending joy merely from their thoughts. The mental frequency is so elevated that generating a thought about love produces the exact same ecstasy that humans can only achieve through intense physical intimacy.
Wow. Imagination equals physical reality at that level.
Exactly.
That is a wild concept. And then, at the absolute top tier they discuss, the Elysium Islands continent. The text states that the supercelestial beings here are actually androgynous.
Right, they embody both traits simultaneously.
Because they have biologically and spiritually merged the masculine and the feminine within themselves, they no longer have any external craving. They don't need a partner to complete the circuit, so they exist in a perpetual, uninterrupted state of extreme joy.
When you look at this entire cosmic progression, you realize the text is framing physical sexual intimacy on Earth in a very specific way.
How so?
It is not the ultimate final destination of human existence. Physical intimacy is a set of rudimentary training wheels.
We are given this incredibly intense, pleasurable, physical experience on Earth, to teach our dense brains what joy actually feels like.
Exactly. But eventually, as our vibrational frequencies get higher and we learn how to generate that frequency internally, we take the training wheels off.
The author states unequivocally that if you do not understand and fully enjoy emotional and romantic love on Earth, you will never learn the baseline frequency of joy.
And if you cannot eventually sublimate that physical love into the non-material world, you will, quote, never find heaven.
You cannot bypass the earthly curriculum.
No, you have to pass the physical class before you can enroll in the metaphysical one.
Which brings up a massive logistical problem for me. If the higher realms require us to experience ecstasy purely through thought and high frequencies, how does a flawed, jealous, dense human actually achieve that standard?
It's a huge leap.
Right. We don't just wake up one day operating at the frequency of a 10,000-year celestial being.
No, we don't. And the source material is brutally honest about human limitations here. The author states directly that human consciousnesses are impure and our non-material structures are imperfect and defective.
So what's the solution?
In order to ascend, that consciousness must be intentionally purified. You have to completely transform your thinking mode and self-cultivate until your internal hardware can literally resonate at the same frequency as those upper-level spaces.
The text uses some brilliant analogies to explain this purification process.
Yeah.
It asks, like, can someone who's never driven a vehicle just hop in a car and drive it safely at high speeds without any training?
Of course not.
Right. And if you pull a raw diamond out of a mine, can you immediately see its brilliant 7 colors? Can you just glue a jagged, dirty rock onto a crown?
No, it has to be cut, sanded, and polished relentlessly.
Exactly.
Another analogy used is the acrobat. When you see an acrobat perform with extreme, almost inhuman flexibility, you are seeing the result of relentless, agonizing, long-term training.
You can't just step onto a stage and bend your body in half without having done the physical work.
The text applies this exact same logic to our emotional and romantic capacities. The ability to feel pure joy isn't a passive trait. It requires rigorous, dedicated practice.
And the text gives a very specific, striking example of what this practice looks like in real life when it comes to intimacy. It talks about overcoming sexual frigidity.
Which is a very physical example.
Yes. The text argues that for someone who struggles to feel intense physical joy, the only way to transform their defective non-material structure is through deliberate mental focus and practice. It actually maps out the biological trajectory of this refinement.
As a person practices dropping domination and focusing purely on the frequency of love, the physical threshold required to achieve a climax actually lowers.
The nervous system becomes more sensitive and attuned.
Right, it becomes easier and easier to become excited because the resistance, the shame, the anxiety, the ownership is being stripped away. But again, the ultimate goal of this practice isn't just to have better physical sex on Earth.
Right. The text explains that through this intense mental conditioning, you eventually reach a point where you don't even need the intense physical friction anymore.
You reach a point where just a few words or a deep look into someone's eyes, or even just looking at a beautiful picture, can immediately trigger that state of ultimate ecstasy.
Both physical and spiritual.
Exactly. The author explicitly states that only when you reach that specific threshold have you actually broken free from the low-level bondage of the mortal world.
You have successfully debugged your hardware to match the standard of the 10,000-year world.
By deliberately engaging in emotional and romantic love without the toxicity of domination, you are actively rewriting your own spiritual code. You are teaching your consciousness how to run higher dimensional software while still trapped in a low-dimensional body.
So what does this all mean for you? Even if you are listening to this right now and taking the cosmology completely out of it, like viewing it purely as a secular philosophy, there's immense value in this perspective.
Absolutely.
The idea of treating your emotional and romantic capacity like a muscle is incredibly empowering. The ability to love deeply, the ability to feel profound joy, isn't just some static lottery ticket you're born with.
It is a skill.
Yeah. It is a muscle that requires conscious, deliberate practice to polish the diamond.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, it is a demanding philosophy. And the author provides a crucial holistic warning toward the end of the text.
Oh, this is important.
They stress that Lifechanyuan values are a unified entity. This is an incredibly important caveat to everything we've discussed today.
Right.
The text explicitly warns that if a person obsesses only over emotional and romantic love and completely neglects the other aspects of life, ecology, and spiritual refinement, they are bound to become deformed.
I love that word, deformed. Focusing only on sex to reach enlightenment in this framework is like going to the gym and exclusively doing bicep curls every single day.
That's a great way to picture it.
You might develop one incredibly strong muscle, but your body as a whole becomes deformed, unbalanced, and practically useless. The text says, love and sex are just one effective link in the overall program.
If you remove that link, the entire system crashes. But it is still just one link.
Right. The author notes that authentic self-improvement is both simple in its mechanics, but incredibly complex in its execution.
There is no shortcut. You cannot just walk through it easily or get to heaven by a fluke or by obsessing over a single pleasure. It requires a balanced, comprehensive rewiring of how you interact with every facet of existence.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought for you to take away today. We've unpacked this idea that the highest possible state of spiritual existence is the ability to feel ultimate, overwhelming joy, purely through a thought or a glance, without ever needing physical touch.
Right.
If that concept holds any weight, how much of our dense physical reality is just a simulation designed to train our minds?
It's a trippy thought.
And if that's true, are we spending way too much of our lives focusing on trying to manipulate and hoard the physical world while completely neglecting the mental gym? We started by talking about a staircase to enlightenment where the rungs are made of earthly pleasures.
Yeah.
Maybe the ultimate lesson of this text isn't just about learning to enjoy the climb, but realizing that the physical stairs were only ever there to teach us how to fly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into our sources. Until next time.